Okay, let's face it. Getting anyone to pay attention these days feels like, well, it's tough.
It really is.
Our lives are just saturated with information.
Mm.
And, if you're trying to raise money, the numbers are kind of stark. Something like 80% of mass communications just get completely ignored.
80%. Yeah. Think about that. Most of your effort just poof, vanishing.
Exactly. And it really underscores the challenge, right? In this super noisy world, a generic message, it just doesn't cut through.
Nope. It's like trying to whisper in a hurricane.
Right. And that's really the core problem we're going to dive into today.
Yeah.
When your outreach sounds, like everyone else's, it doesn't create that real connection.
And you miss huge opportunities, not just for fundraising, but for real impact.
Precisely. So our mission for this deep dive is to explore a better way, a way to connect with supporters, understand what actually motivates them deep down, and build genuine, lasting relationships.
And we're drawing our insights today from The Heartbeat of Kingdom Funding, agli11.pdf. It offers this compelling alternative.
Right, it moves beyond just the transaction.
Exactly. It focuses on the donor's core drivers and building real partnerships. And just for clarity, when we say kingdom funding, we're talking about a faith-based approach. Yeah. Resourcing ministry through these deeper connections.
Got it. Okay, so let's unpack this. We'll look at biblical principles that resonate, explore why people give.
The different motivations.
Yeah, and uncover some really practical strategies for building stronger, more impactful partnerships. So if you've ever felt like, I don't know, your message isn't landing,
or you just want to connect on a more meaningful level,
this is for you.
It's about shifting, really, moving from just surface interactions to nurturing generosity and shared purpose.
Okay, let's jump right in then. The source material talks about these biblical foundations for what it calls heart-centered giving. And that image, that really powerful image of the widow's 2 mites, Luke 21, that immediately springs to mind.
Oh, absolutely. It's such a foundational story. Jesus points out this poor widow giving her last 2 tiny coins. He says she actually gave more than all the wealthy donors putting in large sums.
More.
Yeah. The key takeaway is that giving is measured by the heart sacrifice, not the size of the wallet.
Right. It shifts the focus entirely from capacity to commitment.
Completely. It flips our usual script on who the important givers are.
Yeah, it's not about how much someone can give, but the depth of their devotion. And the source connects this straight back to outreach, saying effective outreach has to start with understanding the person, their heart, their sacrifice, not just their bank account.
Precisely. Recognizing the potential in every giver. And then the text brings in Barnabas.
The son of encouragement.
Exactly. He saw potential in people, right? And he invested in them through encouragement, which highlights that support. It comes in many forms.
That's a great point. Contribution isn't just cash.
Right. And this links to the idea that our interactions should value the person's inherent worth and the unique ways they can contribute financially or otherwise.
And the source digs into other examples too, right? Like Samuel 16.
Yes, where God chooses David over Saul, looking at David's heart, not his, outward appearance or stature.
Mary and Martha, Luke 10.
Mary focusing on just being with Jesus is valued over Martha's, frantic busyness.
So the message is consistent. Look deeper. Look beyond the surface.
These biblical stories are powerful reminders. Genuine connection, understanding the heart, the motivations, that's paramount. Not just in faith, but in building these partnerships too.
Okay, so if that's the foundation, focusing on the heart, where do some of the, let's say, more traditional fundraising methods fall short? The source definitely points out limitations.
Yeah, it talks about surface-level fundraising. And the big limitation is relying on metrics that often miss the most crucial piece. The why.
The why behind the gift.
Exactly. Wealth screening, demographics, giving history. Sure, they tell you about capacity. But they rarely reveal someone's calling, their passions, what truly resonates with their spirit. It's like judging a book only by its cover, maybe its thickness.
It feels a bit like treating people as wallets, doesn't it? Just looking at what they can give, not why they might be inspired to give.
Right.
And the source introduces this really interesting concept to counter that.
Yeah.
Spiritual listening.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack that. What does that actually involve?
Spiritual listening. It's about cultivating this intentional attentiveness. It goes beyond just the transaction. It actually starts with prayer.
Prayer. Before outreach.
Yeah. Deliberately seeking God's guidance before you engage, asking for insight into their lives, what God might be doing there.
Okay, in this context, that makes a lot of sense.
It really does. Then it involves asking what the source calls story-based questions.
Story-based questions. Like what?
Well, open-ended questions designed to get at deeper motivations, experiences, things like, when have you felt God's provision most vividly, or what causes really stir your soul?
Ah, okay. Those go way beyond what issues are you interested in?
Exactly. They invite a much more personal level of reflection and sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And the final piece is reflection, and maybe recording it. After a conversation, taking time to note down not just, financial clues, but the emotional and spiritual ones too, dreams they shared, passions, maybe even struggles.
So you build a much richer picture of the person.
A much richer, fuller understanding, yes.
So keeping this idea of spiritual listening in mind, how can organizations actually structure this?
Yeah.
A more heart-centered way to connect. The source talks about 3 pillars of donor understanding.
Yes, these pillars provide a framework for that deeper understanding. Pillar 1 is affection.
Affection.
Yeah, basically what they care about, their passions, significant memories, core convictions, what really motivates them.
Okay.
Second is aspiration. Their dreams for God's kingdom, what impact do they long to see?
Right, their hopes.
And third is action.
Yes.
What are they doing now, their current involvement, their resources, how are they engaged already?
Affection, aspiration, action. Okay, that feels comprehensive. How do you use those pillars then, practically?
Well, the source suggests a tool, a Venn diagram.
Ah, okay.
The idea is to map where a donor's passions, that's the affection pillar, overlap with the ministry's own priorities.
Finding the intersection.
Exactly. And that visual becomes a powerful tool for co-creating what the text calls kingdom impact roadmaps.
Co-creating. So it's not just, here's what we need money for.
No, exactly. It's finding that sweet spot where the donor's heart truly aligns with the ministry's work. It makes the partnership feel much more, meaningful, built together.
That makes total sense, finding that alignment. Now, the source also digs into the different types of motivations behind generosity. It pulls out 2 main ones: impact and values alignment. Let's tackle impact first. What's the driving force there?
Okay, so impact-driven givers. They are primarily motivated by seeing tangible results, measurable results.
What difference will my gift make? Question.
Precisely. How many lives changed? How many communities transformed? What specific outcomes? They want to see that direct line from their giving to real-world change.
And the source uses the Good Samaritan parable as a parallel here. Why that story specifically?
Well, the Good Samaritan's generosity was incredibly practical, right? And immediate. He didn't just offer, kind words.
No, he got his hands dirty.
Exactly. He physically helped, paid for immediate needs, ensured ongoing care. It's a powerful picture of compassion leading to concrete, observable action, tangible impact.
Okay, yeah, that connection is clear. So for organizations wanting to really connect with these impact-driven folks, what does the source suggest?
Practically. It emphasizes data-driven storytelling.
Data-driven storytelling, okay.
Meaning combine those compelling personal stories of transformation with concrete metrics, statistics, show the impact clearly.
Numbers and narrative together.
Exactly. They also suggest things like site visits or maybe virtual tours now so donors can witness the impact themselves.
Let them see it.
Yeah. And things like progress dashboards can be really effective too. Regular updates on milestones achieved because of their support.
All right, that's very tangible, results-focused. Now, the second key motivation, values alignment. What drives these givers?
So donors motivated by values alignment, they give to causes that resonate deeply with their core convictions.
Their fundamental beliefs.
Right. Things like justice, mercy, evangelism, maybe creation care, whatever their deeply held beliefs are. They see giving as an extension of who they are.
An expression of their identity.
They want to partner with organizations that share those fundamental values. So here, it's maybe less about the specific numbers and more about that shared mission, the shared ethical framework.
Okay, and the biblical parallel used here is the early church in Acts 2. Why is that the example?
Because the early believers in Acts 2 were so deeply united by their shared faith and values. They were committed to the apostles' teaching, fellowship, breaking bread, prayer, and they shared possessions to meet needs. It's this powerful picture of a community bound by shared convictions, which then leads to generosity and mutual support.
That shared identity seems crucial.
Yeah.
So practically, how do organizations connect with these values-driven donors?
The source really highlights values-based messaging.
Makes sense.
Clearly communicate the ministry's core values, explicitly connect giving opportunities to those convictions, show how supporting the ministry is living out those shared values,
Got it.
and also create opportunities for them to engage in ways that align with those values, foster that sense of shared purpose and belonging.
Okay, we've talked about understanding motivations. The source then moves into donor segmentation. But it stresses this is way more than just, slicing up mailing lists.
Right. That's the crucial difference in this heart-centered view.
What is it then?
Segmentation here is about truly seeing people, recognizing each donor as an individual, unique motivations, unique capacities, unique callings.
Moving beyond one size fits all.
Totally. Genuinely understanding who your supporters are and what makes them tick, generously speaking.
And the source throws out a pretty compelling stat here. Personalized outreach can boost engagement by over 70%.
Yeah, and motivation-based campaigns can see significant revenue lifts, too.
Wow. That's huge. It really shows the power of tailoring the approach.
It really does. And to help with this, the text introduces a framework of donor archetypes.
Archetypes, like profiles.
Kind of. They're not meant as rigid boxes, but more like helpful lenses, ways to understand common motivations and preferences.
Okay. And these include visionaries, steadfast stewards, impact investors, relational givers, and teeters. Can you maybe give us a flavor of a couple of those, how they differ?
Sure. Take visionaries. They're primarily motivated by aligning with a big, significant, forward-looking vision.
Big picture people.
Exactly. The biblical parallel offered is Abraham's call to a promised land. So engagement for them might involve sharing long-term strategic plans, maybe inviting their input at planning retreats.
Okay. And what about, say, relational givers?
Well, as the name suggests, they're motivated by personal connection, relationships. The source gives the example of Emma, this retired teacher who loved writing letters to missionaries.
Oh, nice example.
Yeah. So engagement there is all about fostering those personal connections, highlighting the relational aspects of the ministry's work, making them feel known.
That really clarifies how thinking in archetypes helps tailor the approach. And the source connects this theologically too, right, to 1 Corinthians 12.
Yes, the body with many parts.
Different gifts, different roles.
Exactly. Just like a body needs all its diverse parts working together, a ministry thrives when it recognizes and engages the diverse motivations and capacities of all its supporters. Each part is valuable.
Okay, taking that segmentation idea further, the source gets really practical about cultivating different types of donors. Major donors, mid-level, recurring, even potential donors. Let's start at the top. Major donors. The source calls them callers of vision. What defines them?
Well, typically, major donors have significant financial capacity, often a history of substantial giving, and usually a strong desire to see their resources create a really lasting impact. A legacy, perhaps.
And their motivations. Beyond just the impact.
Often, yeah. It can be about funding those big transformative projects, creating an enduring legacy, like you said, sometimes a deep sense of responsibility in stewarding the wealth they have, or even feeling a specific personal calling to support a particular area of work.
The source uses Abraham, Lydia, and Cornelius as biblical examples. What do they show us?
They show different facets, right? Abraham's willingness to follow God's big vision, Lydia's very practical support using her resources, her home for the early church, Cornelius's consistent generosity and prayerfulness. They all underscore the importance of building genuine relationships, understanding their specific passions, and recognizing their desire to partner in significant ways towards a big vision.
So cultivating these deep relationships, what are the strategies?
The text really emphasizes listen first, speak second. Invest time understanding their story, their hopes for the kingdom before you start talking proposals. Shared vision casting is also key, working with them to develop plans, valuing their insights.
Collaboration.
Yes. And finally, those personalized touch points. Things like annual impact journeys tailored to them, maybe curated info briefs on topics they care about, or even invitations to join stewardship councils or advisory groups, deepening the partnership.
Okay, let's shift to mid-level donors. Stewards in motion, the source calls them. What are their motivations usually?
Mid-level donors, they're often motivated by wanting to deepen their commitment, maybe increasing their giving over time. They often desire a sense of ownership in the ministry's success.
Feeling involved.
Yeah, and they appreciate relational connection, affirmation, and often they hope for future opportunities for maybe greater influence or involvement down the line. They're often on a journey of growing generosity.
So how do you cultivate these stewards in motion? Keep them moving.
The source suggests focusing on consistent communication rhythms. Maybe quarterly impact letters, personalized check-ins, keeping them informed and feeling valued. Then, invitation to engagement.
Getting them more involved.
Right. Maybe through specific project partnerships they can champion, or offering behind-the-scenes updates or experiences. And finally, spiritual formation experiences.
Interesting. Like donor devotionals.
Exactly. Or maybe peer learning circles, opportunities to explore the theological basis of the ministry, things that nurture their spiritual growth alongside their giving. The source uses Lydia's growing devotion as a good illustration of this kind of journey.
All right, now for recurring donors. The anchors of sustainability. Why are they so crucial?
They are absolutely vital. Recurring donors provide that consistent, predictable financial base. It's essential for long-term stability, for planning.
For everything, really.
The bedrock.
Totally. Their ongoing commitment usually shows a strong sense of partnership, and they really value getting regular updates on the continuous work they're supporting.
And what motivates that kind of steady, faithful giving? Often it comes from a few places. Maybe a sense of spiritual discipline, like tithing, or an expression of deep trust in the ministry's mission and integrity. Sometimes it's about feeling like they belong to the community of supporters, and definitely a desire for ongoing, consistent impact. The source connects this to biblical ideas like the daily manna, the early church's weekly offering in 1 Corinthians 16, the concept of first fruits, all pointing to regular, intentional generosity.
And there's a story about Sarah's monthly giving.
Yeah, a nice illustration of that faithful, consistent commitment over time.
So how do you best cultivate and nurture this vital group? Keep them anchored.
The source lays out a practical four-phase approach. Onboarding, warmly welcoming them, making them feel part of things right away. Engagement, deepening their connection to the mission over time. Affirmation, regularly acknowledging and celebrating their partnership, showing you don't take it for granted. And growth, offering opportunities for deeper involvement if they desire it.
Consistent communication is key here too, I imagine.
Absolutely. Consistent, impactful communication, showing the ongoing results of their regular support. That's crucial.
Okay, last group, potential donors. The seedbed of generosity. What's the mindset here?
The crucial mindset shift is seeing potential donors not as like future transactions waiting to happen,
Right.
but as fertile ground, ready for careful cultivation. The source compares it to how Jesus patiently invested in his disciples.
Okay, so what are the principles for cultivating this seedbed?
It starts with building a genuine relational foundation, then providing meaningful educational engagement, helping them understand the work, extending a clear spiritual invitation to partner in God's mission, and practicing consistent reciprocal transparency, building trust.
And the story of Grace illustrates this. Her first small gift leading to more.
Exactly. It shows it's often a gradual process, nurturing interest and building trust over time.
So practically, what does that cultivation journey look like?
The source maps it out, moving from initial awareness, sparking curiosity, then fostering connection, extending an invitation to give that first gift, and finally nurturing reciprocity to affirm that step and encourage ongoing partnership.
And that involves specific strategies.
Yeah, things like sharing compelling stories, offering scripture-based teaching relevant to the mission, maybe creating interactive ways for them to engage online or in person, developing relationship-building rituals like prayer partnerships or chances for ministry immersion. It's patient, intentional work.
This is all incredibly insightful. Now, we've talked a lot about understanding, connecting, cultivating, but eventually you get to the ask.
The invitation.
Right, and the source really emphasizes this needs to be more than just a financial transaction. What's the core shift in perspective required?
The vital shift is moving away from seeing the ask as just getting money.
Yeah.
And reframing it as a sacred invitation.
A sacred invitation.
Yeah. A meaningful opportunity for someone to actively participate in God's work, to experience the joy of generosity. The source strongly warns against manipulative tactics, fear, guilt, control.
Right.
And points instead to the biblical model. Asking rooted in transparency, real relationship, and a sincere invitation to partner.
So what are the key principles for making this God-centered ask?
The text highlights 4 C's. Clarity, being clear about the vision and the specific need. Connection, building on that foundation of authentic relationship. Confidence, rooted in the conviction that the mission is important. And Christ-like humility, recognizing you're facilitating an opportunity, not applying pressure.
Okay, clarity, connection, confidence, humility.
And the focus should always be on mutual transformation. How the ministry impacts lives, yes, but also how giving transforms the giver's heart. Echoing 2 Corinthians 9:7, God loves a cheerful giver.
Not a pressured giver.
Exactly.
The source even breaks the ask down into 3 Ps. Pray, prepare, present. Can you unpack those quickly?
Sure. Pray is foundational, seeking God's guidance before, during, after. Prepare is doing your homework, understanding the partner, articulating the vision clearly, defining the specific need, and present is delivering that invitation with clarity, confidence, humility, and leaving space for the Holy Spirit to work.
There's a role-play example of a direct ask in the source.
Yeah.
What makes it effective from this perspective?
Well, first, it starts with genuine gratitude for their past engagement, sets a relational tone right away. Then it shares a specific, heartfelt story, makes the need real, illustrates the vision. The ask itself is very clear, very specific. A gift of X amount would achieve Y impact.
Connects the dots clearly.
Yes. And importantly, it frames the whole thing within the bigger picture of what God is doing. It's an invitation to join that.
And what about handling objections? Because those happen.
Oh, absolutely. The source stresses that objections aren't necessarily no. They're often opportunities for more dialogue. Opportunities to understand better, clarify things. It gives examples of ministry-centered responses, empathetic, transparent, keeping the focus on the mission's importance, responding with grace.
Not getting defensive.
No, definitely not. And the source also mentions the power of presence, face-to-face or video. Why is that important for the ask? Well, presence being there, fully engaged, whether in person or virtually, it builds trust. It allows for that deeper spiritual connection.
You pick up on more.
Exactly. Nonverbal cues, real-time discernment. It fosters generosity rooted in relationship. The source connects it to the incarnational principle and how Paul valued that personal connection in his ministry.
Okay, so if we're really shifting from seeing donors as just funders to seeing them as true co-laborers, how do we actually build these real kingdom partnerships?
The source reframes the whole thing as sacred partnership, built on shared vision, mutual trust, and a clear process. It goes way beyond just money.
Right.
It's inviting people to co-labor with their hearts, their prayers, their presence, their skills, everything.
So what are the key ingredients for that?
3 keys highlighted are vision, making sure it's shared, compelling, clear what God's doing, trust earned through consistency, transparency, integrity, humility, and process having a relational framework.
A process for partnership.
Yeah, intentionally connecting, casting that shared vision, thoughtfully inviting participation, diligently following up, and consistently cultivating the relationship long term.
It sounds like building something solid, something that lasts.
Yeah.
And the source mentions celebrating contribution over capacity.
Yes, so important. Authentic partnership values every form of contribution, recognizing that even seemingly small gifts or acts of service given with a whole heart have huge value in God's eyes. It goes back to the widow's mite again. And the source offers practical tips for leaders, things like hosting partnership gatherings, great impact reporting, personalizing communications, really honoring the relationship itself.
There's also a tool mentioned, a donor identification grid.
Yeah.
Connection versus capacity. How does that fit in?
Yeah, the grid. It's a tool for strategic relational stewardship. It helps you think about where to focus your energy.
How so?
You plot people based on, roughly, their connection to the mission versus their apparent capacity to give. It's not just about chasing the money.
Right.
It helps you prayerfully discern where God might already be working in someone's heart, even if their capacity seems lower, and where maybe more relational investment is needed for someone with higher capacity but lower connection right now.
So it guides your relational effort.
Exactly. High connection, high capacity are key partners. High connection, lower capacity are your loyal anchors and advocates. Lower connection, high capacity are prospects needing cultivation. Lower, you appreciate them, but maybe focus deep engagement elsewhere. It helps prioritize relationally.
Okay, this idea of reflective partnership sounds really interesting. What's the essence of that?
It's basically about intentional pausing, thoughtfully reflecting on your interactions and how relationships with partners are developing.
Stepping back to look at the process.
Exactly. And the source introduces the process journal as a key tool for this, to cultivate both strategic clarity and spiritual sensitivity.
A process journal. Like keeping notes, but more structured.
Yeah, and more reflective. The benefits are pretty significant. It helps you clarify complex conversations, turn them into actionable insights.
Cognitive clarity.
Right. It also enhances spiritual sensitivity, creating space to really listen for God's leading, understand deeper motivations. It promotes relational accountability, keeping track of commitments. And it helps you learn and adapt, seeing patterns, refining your approach.
And the source connects this to biblical practices.
Like Moses' tablets, Paul's letters, practices of recording, reflecting, communicating intentionally.
Okay, so what kind of things would you put in this journal? The source gives 3 keystone prompts.
Yes. The first is, what were the key takeaways from our last interaction? Just capturing the crucial insights.
Yeah.
The second, what are the next steps in building this relationship? Focusing on concrete, intentional actions.
Right, moving it forward.
And the third, how can we better understand this individual's passions and motivations? Really pushing for deeper empathy and alignment.
Those are great questions. Really practical for guiding reflection. And designing the journal itself. Any tips there?
The source suggests thinking about the medium first, physical notebook, digital doc, whatever works for you. Then maybe creating sections, partner profiles, interaction notes, action steps, a place for passions, motivations. Establishing a regular review rhythm is key. Weekly, monthly, quarterly maybe. And integrating the spiritual aspect, maybe starting with prayer, ending with gratitude. The story of Sarah and Tom in the source shows how this kind of journaling really helped their collaboration become more fruitful.
The source also tackles some common myths in partnership development. Let's bust a couple. What's one?
Okay, a big one. If they're really interested, they'll reach out to us.
The passive approach.
Exactly. The counterpoint stresses the biblical need for proactive invitation. Think of Jesus calling Lazarus out of the tomb, or the parable of the great banquet the host sent servants out repeatedly to invite people. We need to invite.
Good point. What's another myth?
We need a super detailed proposal right away.
Yeah, feels like pressure sometimes.
Right. The counter says start with a compelling, story-driven briefing. Then develop the proposal iteratively in conversation with the potential partner, like how Moses got the detailed tabernacle plans after encountering God, not before.
Co-creation again.
Exactly. And maybe one more. The bigger the initial ask, the more impressive.
Go big or go home.
The counterpoint is the power of a humble, clear, specific invitation, like how Jesus often interacted with people. It's about clarity in relationship, not just shock value.
So shifting from passive and transactional to active, relational, humble invitation. And there's a 3-phase model suggested.
Yes, to help structure this. Phase 1 is connect and nurture, sparking and sustaining interest. Phase 2 is converse and co-create, building that shared vision through dialogue. And phase 3 is commit and collaborate, inviting them into that deeper covenantal partnership. It's a journey.
Okay, the source then revisits the courageous conversation, basically, the ask, but through this partnership lens. Key takeaways from that revisit.
The main thing is reinforcing that asking is that sacred invitation. It's joining a shared mission, not just a financial thing.
Right.
It offers a 4-phase framework for the conversation itself. First, context and connection. Second, vision framing, painting the picture. Third, the ask itself clear, God-centered. And fourth, invitation and listening, making the ask, then pausing, really listening to the response.
And there are practical examples.
Yeah, role-play dialogues, a case study like the Philippine church update with different ask scripts, direct monthly partner church partnership, even a foundation grant conversation example, plus a template for building your own spirit-led script focusing on gratitude, vision, impact, the specific ask, options, and appreciation. Lots of practical help there.
Lastly, the source includes reflective exercises for deeper engagement. What's the overall aim of these?
The main goal is to help you, the listener, deepen your self-awareness around this. Maybe challenge some assumptions you hold, apply the principles practically, bridge theory to your own experience, encourage ongoing growth, and maybe unlock insights when you hit challenges.
Okay. Can you give an example or two, something listeners could try?
Sure. Under heart-level connection, one exercise is to intentionally conduct, say, 3 relational interviews with partners or potential partners. Really focus on understanding their story, their motivations.
Okay, get beyond the surface.
Exactly. Under trusting the process, there's an exercise to review your current partnership pipeline. Does it look relational and long-term or just transactional and short-term? Be honest.
Good self-assessment.
And under courageous conversations, one exercise is to really prepare for your next significant ask using that pray, prepare, present framework. Maybe even create your own objection cheat sheet with thoughtful, ministry-centered responses to build confidence and empathy.
Wow. This has been incredibly thorough, a really deep dive into this heart-centered approach to kingdom funding. If you had to summarize the biggest takeaway, the most important shift for people listening.
I think the most fundamental shift is moving away from a purely transactional mindset in fundraising towards a transformative one, centered on building authentic relationships, rooted in deep understanding and a truly shared vision for God's work. Recognizing that effective kingdom funding isn't just about getting resources.
Right.
It's about deepening fellowship, igniting vision together, and seeing God's kingdom advance through these interconnected lives, this shared purpose.
That's powerful. So what's that final thought you want to leave us mulling over today?
I guess I'd just encourage you listening to really prayerfully consider, how can you move beyond seeing your supporters primarily as donors? How can you fully embrace this paradigm of co-laboring partnership, recognizing the eternal significance these relationships hold? Maybe take some time to reflect on your own approaches. How can you more intentionally invite others to join in God's work, not just with their finances, but with their whole hearts, their unique gifts, their passionate commitment? That feels like the real invitation here.